The Texas pro-life law is in effect, and you know what? We're still here. The world hasn't ended. Life goes on as normal. And the beauty of this is it's demonstrating, I think, to the country at large and significantly to the Supreme Court that it's okay to overturn Roe v. Wade. It's not going to produce the cataclysm that the left has constantly warned about. Yes, there will be red states that have some regulations on abortion, blue states that by and large have more permissive laws. People who really want could either move or simply travel from one state to the other. So abortion will not be prohibited nationwide. It will merely be restricted in certain parts of the country that don't want it. Now, very interestingly, the unique aspect of the Texas law, which is that the state itself doesn't enforce the law. The state itself doesn't shut down clinics. The state doesn't prosecute doctors or women or anyone else for that matter, but private citizens are given standing or given sort of legitimacy under the law to be able to sue people who are helping to procure abortions. Not the woman herself, but the doctor, the nurses, the clinic, even the people who assist in any way in getting her to the clinic, advising her to have an abortion, and so on. And so this has produced the desired effect. It's actually caused the major clinics to stop performing abortions after 6 weeks. They're terrified of these lawsuits. And of course, there are right-to-lifers who are just waiting to file those suits. And the left is screaming. It's kind of all over social media. It's all over the press. And the idea is, this is outrageous. The state of Texas has deputized private actors to do what the state itself is constitutionally prohibited from doing. Let's look at some of these reactions. Here's an article in CNN. It talks about the fact that this is unprecedented. This is a playbook for the red states. This is a devious scheme to create a sort of vigilante system in which essentially private, quote, vigilantes are enforcing this law that the state of Texas can't. And that's been Biden's position. Here's Biden. He says that the Texas law, quote, creates a vigilante system. The Texas Tribune interviewed John Michaels, a professor at UCLA Law. He goes, it's a way of backdooring and winking while constitutional violations are occurring. It's compromising democracy. Now, what I find all so interesting about all this is that while the left is screaming that the state of Texas is deputizing private actors to do what the state, at least as of now, can't do, isn't this exactly what the left approves of in the case of digital censorship? Let's think about what's going on in those cases. The Biden administration and the government, the Democrats in Congress, in the House and the Senate, are pressuring private entities, which is to say Twitter, Facebook, Google, to use their power and shut people up and shut people down and censor them in a way that the Congress itself can't do. Why? Because the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law restricting freedom of speech or of the press. So Congress, and by extension the government, cannot directly regulate speech. So what does it do? It uses its leverage. And what is the leverage? Section 230. Congress basically provides the subsidy, massive subsidy, to the digital platforms and basically says to them, in exchange for this, we're going to be using our leverage on you to make you do something that we ourselves can't do. So the left is kind of caught here because they're doing exactly the same thing that they condemn Texas for doing. In fact, it's even worse. The state of Texas is not working closely with pro-life groups to say, okay, you know what? Here's a clinic. Let's target that clinic and let's get rid of that guy. Here's Planned Parenthood in Austin. Let's target that clinic. Let's go sue those. You guys go sue them because we can't sue them. So there's not the active collaboration that you see in the censorship area, where the Biden administration, by its own admission, Jen Psaki has admitted this, is literally feeding the digital platforms information. This guy's producing misinformation. These 12 people need to be kicked off Facebook. So there is direct collaboration here. Now, while the two cases seem roughly analogous in the manner I've just described, there actually is one important difference, and that is this. The right of free speech is, in fact, explicitly firmly, unmistakably anchored in the Constitution. Pick up the Constitution, there it is. The right of freedom of speech or of the press shall not be abridged. The right of abortion, however, is not in the Constitution. In fact, happily, in my view, it is up for reconsideration. The Supreme Court is going to be looking exactly at the legitimacy of Roe v. Wade, and pretty much the only defense of Roe, even on the part of its advocates, is, it's settled law. It's been around for 70 years. So the fact that Roe versus Wade's been around since 1973, for not 70, but 50 years, appears to be the only argument in its favor, even though some of our most horrific laws through the or judicial precedents through the centuries. Think, for example, of Plessy versus Ferguson, the case that upheld segregation. That case, I believe, 1898, wasn't overturned until 1954. That was in place for more than half a century. So bad precedents can somehow take root. It's the job of the Supreme Court to uproot them. So there is no abortion right in the Constitution, but there is a free speech right. And therefore, it seems to me that what the state of Texas is doing has far greater legitimacy than what the Biden administration is doing in the area of censorship.